Welcome to the 77%. Here we focus on the issues that are very important for Africa's youth. Now, I am in conversation with one of the legends when it comes to investigative journalism across the African continent. He's a man who has, for very good reasons, decided that he's going to wear beads for, I guess, the rest of his life. Anas Aremyaw Anas is my guest here today on the 77%. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
The last time you did an investigation was last year, towards the end of the year in Ghana. For the last 6 or 7 months, you've been very silent. And knowing you, when you are silent, it usually means bad news for the bad guys. So, are you cooking something for the bad guys?
You got it exactly right. You know, journalism is about impact. It's not just about putting it out there and then going to sleep. So you have to walk the work. Walking the work means, you remember that last month I removed the Deputy Minister for Finance. We are walking the talk by ensuring that he's put before the appropriate quarters of state so that he can be subjected to the full rigors of the law, and that also takes a bit of time. And as you know, that's how I work. I give some time, I take my time, and I can tell you, the next one, you will love it.
So I'm sensing that there's something big coming here. Are you going to hint us what is coming?
See, is the work that I'm doing now might be the last before we get into the election, but already the signs are very clear, and I can tell you the foundations will be shaken once more. Stay tuned.
When you say the foundations, you're referring to Ghana's political foundations.
Exactly, that's the point, as you know. Of course, there are a couple of international ones that they're about to be released, but this one, talking to you as a Ghanaian, I mean the foundations of Ghana would be shaken.
And Anas, what's the deal with your beats? It's become synonymous with you. What's the deal here?
Well, I think that for continuity and for protection, that's why I have these beats on. It gives me that anonymity. There's no story worth our lives as human beings. And if you are able to preserve yourself, you have the capacity to live, and with all the experiences, to be able to tell the next story. And so this beats has been that of me and my team. And you recall, even with the beats, there are issues that come with it. There are dangers that we face. And I know you recall the death of Ahmed Swali, who was shot twice in his heart and one in his neck in Ghana. We do our best, but the best protection is God Almighty.
Yeah. Now, I guess that many journalists, you have to be able to stand by your work. And if you hide your identity, how are you able to stand by your work? You hide your identity, but you publish a lot of high-impact journalism. How do you reconcile the two positions?
Well, I think that the evidence is not in my face or in my beats. Journalism is about hard work. It's about hardcore evidence. And so if you are in a court of law, you put before all this evidence, and a judge would sit and make sense out of the evidence you've put. And I'm not telling you about journalism that I'm about to practice. I'm telling you about journalism that I've done that has ended up with many people going to jail. Remember the Chinese sex mafia story? They were jailed 45 years. Remember Nana Kwesi Agyemang's story? Jailed 13 years. Remember the Tema Habo story? Jailed 15 years. So I am telling you of a consistent pattern of journalism that has worked for Ghana. I am a product of the society. I do what makes sense to my grandmother in the village. And so there's no point in doing journalism and walking on the same street with the bad guy. I do journalism that ends up bringing me to court for me to testify as a witness, show that hardcore evidence, and get the people prosecuted. I did same in the judges scandal, you remember? So it's been the mantra, and we continue to push.
I was listening to one of your talks, I think in Oslo, about 5 years ago, where you talked about this name, shame, and jail mantra. Do you still stand by it 5 years on?
That's what I do. That's my kind of journalism. Not everybody agrees with this particular brand of journalism. But like I keep saying, there is no point in doing journalism with that bad guy and walking on the street with him. Journalism is about the progress of society. So I say to myself, no, I want to do that kind of brand of journalism that ends up not just doing journalism that people will clap their hands and take tea and read and laugh, but also have positive impact on our society, have an impact on our mushrooming democracy, because we are the fourth estate of the realm, and we must ensure that whatever we do goes a long way to help our democracy.
Which is slightly different, because typically journalists do not have to go to court to prosecute the people that they have investigated. But you don't just publish, you also go to court and give witness. So, and I know you are a lawyer, so you are wearing two hats. You are the journalist and you are also a lawyer. In this case, if someone says that you are judge and jury at the same time, would they be wrong to assess you in that way?
First of all, when you collect pieces of evidence, you don't make judgment of that evidence. When you go to the court of law, it means that you are sitting before an adjudication, a panel, and that panel, be if it's the court of appeal, will be more than one. If it's the Supreme Court, will be more than one. And these fine brains are the ones sitting to take a decision on the work you have done. So by saying I go to court, it doesn't mean that I decide absolutely. But I can tell you that my brand of journalism is about dealing with the real issues and giving even the accuser an opportunity to stick out his neck and make his point. So all the people I've dealt with over the years have the right to bring in their lawyers, like I keep saying. So yeah, I wear the beats, but at the end of the day, whoever is in the net has a fair opportunity to defend herself or himself. And I think that's the beauty of democracy.
You say that is the beauty of democracy, but this method has come under a lot of attack recently, and we'll get into that shortly. But let's broaden the conversation and look at the continent. You've been exposing a lot of corruption over the last couple of years across the continent. I remember your report on the Nigeria baby factory. You've been to the Seychelles to expose tax havens. What is your assessment of corruption on the continent?
Well, I think generally the patterns are beginning to shift. It is true that there's a lot of problems in Burkina Faso, a lot of problems. Our friend Martinez died in Cameroon, and we have problems in Benin. But generally, where the hope is that young African journalists who I teach, I teach a lot of them, with Sinezo, with even ZAM in Netherlands, we impact a lot onto the young ones. And the enthusiasm is what baffles me, and that gives me a lot of hope that despite the difficult moments that Africa is suffering, we'll be able to pull through. Don't forget, America, Europe wasn't built in a day. People have died to keep Germany what it is. People have died to keep the US, Canada, and other developed nations what it is. You look at American history, Nellie Bly, she was undercover in a psychiatric hospital. And this is deep in American history. Somebody would have to pay for it. Somebody will have to do the clean job. And that even didn't start from us. Tommy Thompson, Kofi Kumsen, Kwesi Pratt, Kweku Bako, all these great guys have come to contribute. So it's an ongoing process. It's not going to be easy. But the good thing is that there is hope for the African continent.
You talked about the young people that you mentor and you teach. So do you sense that there are people who are interested in taking up the role that you play?
Certainly, yes. We have a program we're doing in Nigeria called Nigeria Investigative. And I can tell you the enthusiasm. This is a MacArthur Foundation funded project that we do in Nigeria. The alacrity with which the young ones from school are taking up investigative and undercover journalism is something that is worth emulating. And I believe that replicating this on the rest and parts of Africa will make a better Africa.
But then you've done all of this. You're mentoring a lot of young people. But do you see that African journalists are winning the fight against corruption?
Well, the fight against corruption is judged from government to government. And Rwanda is doing well. Some other African countries have picked up very well. We know where they started from. And I think that fighting corruption should not be the duty of journalists alone. It takes the people. We are mirrors of society. So it's a holistic approach. It's not going to be easy. We can't say we have won, but we have to be wide awake every single day, knowing that any opportunity you give, somebody who can steal will take that opportunity and steal. It's also about building institutions, building civil society. With all of us, with our hands on deck, would ensure that we push our democracy to a better height.
Okay. And if you can hear Happy Birthday in the background, that's because we are here at the Global Media Forum 2023, and there is an event happening right behind me. We are not celebrating a birthday, just here at DW's Global Media Forum. Now, let's talk a bit more about your impact, because there are lots of young people who are interested in becoming like you, exposing corruption in their countries. But there are obviously a lot of challenges. Talk to them about some of the risks that investigative journalism, undercover investigative journalism faces.
Well, I think that, first of all, journalism is not a tea party. It's a hot kitchen. And if you don't have the energy to do it, you get out. Nobody should think that coming into journalism is a bed of roses. It is not. You are going to be attacked. You are going to be sued. In the football scandal, I was sued 66 times. But here is the trick. If you stick to hardcore evidence, no matter the suit, no matter the number of people who sue you, truth will stand, as Commonwealth Hall would always say. So issues will come. People are going to jump onto everything that you do. People will fabricate stories, try to clear you out. But I tell you, when you stick to the common trade of sticking to the truth, respecting your 5 Ws, and digging deeper, no harm will be caused you. I also would recall physical harms where I have already mentioned Ahmed Swali, Martinez, and other colleagues of mine who were shot. But it's all up to making sure that you check your security very well. You don't become trigger happy in just talking and mentioning things that you do. You ensure that you follow very simple techniques that I can't explain in this interview. But it is difficult, but there is a way of surviving it. And I think that African youth has that capacity to survive the storm. In any case, if we don't solve our problems, who is going to solve? Are we expecting German journalists to fly into our country to help us solve it? Certainly not. Again, you see, we are the best people to know the panacea to our problems, because our problems are local problems. We understand the nuances of our communities, and so no one tells our story better than us. It is not enough for a journalist from the West to parachute into our country to tell the story the way they want it. We are the owners of those stories. We understand the nitty-gritties and must be the ones to tell those stories.
But we are seeing that there's a shrinking of the space for journalists when it comes to their safety. Press freedom, Ghana has fallen several places down the press freedom index. Across the continent, there have been several journalists who have been abducted, who have been killed. Would you still encourage the young people to get into this space where people are being killed and you have to hide your face constantly because people are coming at you?
Certainly. See, we cannot take the freedom of the press for granted. And the fact that you have your freedoms does not mean that you should go to sleep. That is what we ought to be reminded of as journalists. You see, when we become complacent and we think that the freedom we are enjoying was delivered to us on a silver platter, that's when we begin to suffer. How do we rally ourselves together when our brother is under attack? Because if you don't shout today, tomorrow is coming to you. And that's how Ahmed Swale started. Today, it has jumped to several other journalists in Ghana. So one of the biggest lessons in all this is that as journalists, we've got to know that if your friend's house is under fire, that fire could spread to yours. Let's find ways of encouraging people. So yes, despite the difficulties, despite the threats, we have to persevere. That's the only way we can become a better country.
Interesting. And just as context, when we talk about the shrinking space for press across the continent, last year alone, about 60 journalists were either imprisoned or some of them were abducted. And that is an indication of what the situation is like for many press people across the continent. Now, you are very big on having hardcore facts. You've mentioned that a lot of time in this interview. But recently, you sued a politician in Ghana, Kennedy Japan, and the court did not agree with you. The court called what you do investigative terrorism. Now, before this court judgment, Ghana's former special prosecutor, Martin Amidu, had called what you do corruption-preneur, which means that you profit off your investigative works. All of these question your methodology. There have been a lot of questions about the use of what some deem to be entrapment in your investigative journalism. How do you defend your work in the face of all of these issues, especially when the course where you present yourself to defend your work, the court has said that you are a terrorist?
That's interesting. First of all, I was not in court over my story. The story was not looking at the facts in my story. And it is fair. A judge can write a judgment, but that's why we don't have just one stage in court. We have the High Court, you have Court of Appeal, you have the Supreme Court, and you have even the right to a review. It is fair when you get any judgment, you accept it in good faith and you appeal. I'm a lawyer. I've been trained as such, and I know that the fact that a lower court has made pronouncement on a defamation matter does not end it. That's one side of it. Now, secondly, I respect the varied opinions of people because, look, we are not gods unto ourselves. People have the right to critique the work we do. But we ask ourselves that question: has my stories over the years impacted positively on Ghana? That's the point. You understand? And I ask those who say that how do they expect corruption to be fought in an atmosphere where people are pilfering government kitty? People are stealing left, right, and center. How do they expect us? They expect us to announce to them that, okay, I'm coming with my camera, so get ready. Is that what they are expecting? It's not going to work. How come journalism for the BBC, journalism for Al Jazeera, journalism for CNN, all undercover journalism are applauded? But when you do it in Ghana, they have a problem. Entrapment, they are cool things, but they are rights of individuals to protest entrapment. Since I started my journalism, nobody has ever raised issues of entrapment and has won against me before. Because what do? When you put together the hardcore evidence, you take the full unedited evidence to the court of law. So like I said, the first thing everybody says, I have been entrapped. Did I force you to take the money? You are selling your country for millions of dollars. You've stretched your hand. You've taken the money in your hand. You've put it in your pocket. You are smiling and clapping. And you are telling me that I have forced you to take it? How did I force you? So it's all fair comment. And like I said, the beauty of democracy is when in a country, both opposing and supporting views are mixed together. Because people learn from this process. And I believe that young people are watching. The journalism you do can be critiqued by a judge. You are not a god. You also would have a right to ask questions about a judgment. That is all fair. And let's treat all this as part of our democracy. And that's what beautifies the democracy we have. The right you have and the right I have. But let's nobody get it wrong. What works best and what has been impactful in the last 20 years in Ghanaian journalism has been undercover, because we have the evidence to show. We have the facts to show.
Now, the other question is about Martin Amidu's comment that you are a corruption entrepreneur. Do you make money off exposing corruption?
Well, that's a fair comment. Again, Uncle Martin, I've dealt with this matter before. I remember I wrote a public article. He's a senior citizen of Ghana. Me and him have disagreed on many issues publicly. And it is fair. I respect his comments. But here am I sitting here and talking to you. Here am I anywhere. Nobody has ever caught me in a bribery scandal. So, like I said, it is fair. He can describe me. Look, even before Martin Amidu, Atlantic Magazine wrote about me. And they described me as a spy. About 10 descriptions. So it is fair. Point is that, how does that push the frontiers of our democracy forward? And I encourage people like Martin, let them stick out their neck, let them talk. Let them all make the opinions clear. At the end of the day, I know what I'm doing. I'm focused on it. And I can tell you there'll be several liberal dosages of my journalism over a period of time.
Would you say that the attacks on your person, the court cases, and all of these things, have they increased over the last couple of years? How do you assess them?
Well, I think that with the falling trends in our journalistic work in Ghana, comes with, and I hear, I must be fair, it's not just me. There are some other journalists who are, maybe we are even taking it much better because we have international wings. We can fly anywhere we want to. We can deal with any broadcaster across the world that we want. My problem is how the young ones are taking it. You understand? That's where the difficulty is. But here am I sitting here and encouraging them, hey, guys, I know you are suffering. I know that there's been a lot of pressure on you guys. But I tell you, it's just a matter of time. We have sat here as journalists. We've worked. We've seen governments come and go. So would it happen that all those who come against you one day, they will not be there. Other people will come. Your biggest weapon is focusing on your work, getting the facts right. Do not be distracted. If somebody says something that you know is obviously wrong about you, you keep the fire burning. That is the spirit.
And in talking to the young people, there was a few years ago when then candidate Akufo-Addo was contesting to become president. He espoused the Anas principle. He said that was one of the things that he was going to use in his fight against corruption. But it is also during his presidency that we have seen the killing of Ahmed Swale, we have seen attacks on your person, court cases where judges describe you as a terrorist. How do you reconcile the man who espoused the Anas principle and what's happening under his presidency?
Well, I'm too young to pass a judgment on an existing government. And if a government says they have plans and their term has not ended, it will be premature to want to take a definite position about what the president said. But there's one thing that sticks out clearly. Politicians campaign in poetry, but govern in prose.
Do you care to break that down for us? I'm sure that many of our listeners didn't catch that. You please say it again.
I said to you that politicians campaign in poetry, but govern in prose. And this is general across the world, everywhere.
Okay. All right, so that's something for you to chew on as you watch this interview. Now let's focus now on a project that you have started to offer some sort of shelter for upcoming journalists. The Whistleblowers and Journalist Safety International Center. What is that all about?
Well, WatchSec, Whistleblowers and Journalist Safety International, is aimed at housing African journalists who, in the face of trouble, have nowhere to go to. You see, in view of the role I play on the continent, many journalists who face persecution, I'm the first point of call, and I've been hosting them for the past 10 years now. So this time I decided that I want to officialize it so that I can have a permanent shelter where these people will come and take some respite when they are under attack, where people will go through psychological training, where people would also enhance their skills. So that is the WASIC. WASIC was set up about 1.5 years ago, and as I speak, due to the continuous pressure on African journalists, the place is already booked and is full. And I hope that we will have the capacity to contain more. Those who I have written to tell you that there's no space, please trust me, we'll soon open it up more and then give you the opportunity to come and relax a little bit from the heat that you are suffering from your country. So yes, that's all about WASIC, and we hope that we push the frontiers and push the work we do in Africa to a better height.
And how does a journalist access the services of WASIC?
WASIC has a website, so those who apply just go to the website and then they write to us, and then we assess the situation and then we decide what to do. Also, I kept on saying, anytime you have seen me on the big stages to go and receive awards across the world, it is because of somebody that I received those awards. And that somebody is that whistleblower who called me that early morning to say, hey, I know you. Look here, look there, look right. Anytime we are under pressure 100%, they are under pressure 200%. So I don't play with my whistleblowers. And I think that it's about time we create room to accommodate those people too. That's why we have whistleblowers beginning.
And you recently also embarked on a project, and the Arizona project in Cameroon, where you are picking up on the story that was covered by a journalist who was murdered. Do you care to share more on that?
I'm surprised you are picking a lot. You've seen that I'm all over the continent.
Yeah, you did say that the most important thing as a journalist is to do your research.
That is it.
So yes, I do my research.
Yes, the Arizona project is our colleague Martinez. Now Martinez is a colleague. The way we are sitting here and talking, that's how I talk to him. We got up one morning, he was shot dead, and I felt that living up to the legacy. So me and the ZAM conference, a magazine in Netherlands, we came together and then we set up a team. We decided to get into Cameroon to find out what killed our friend. And I can tell you the results are pretty interesting, but of course we'll find an appropriate platform to share what's happening. And I think that those who come after journalists should know that the fact that you've taken down one journalist does not mean that we are sitting down. Now we've managed to come together. We've managed to look for resources so that if you killed anybody, it doesn't matter where, we will put ourselves together. I lead that Arizona project, and I can tell you it's very effective. And apart from mine, there are several other journalists across the world who are also keen in helping exposing the bad deeds of people who kill journalists.
On our Facebook page, we asked you, when I posted that I was going to be talking to you, a lot of questions came in. So we'll be taking some of the questions from our community. Sure. And the real Howard Empress is asking, what are you doing as an investigative journalist to fish out those who murdered your Ahmed Swale?
Well, that's a very important question. Forget not that in the Ahmed Swale case, Tiger Eye itself has been treated as a suspect. So when you are a suspect, you have to know when to navigate and how to navigate. But there's one thing that you should know about me. I never let things go like that. If I can fly journalists across the continent to go to Cameroon to look for what our colleague went through before he died, it should tell you that we are not asleep. However, I'm not here to disclose what's happening, but time will tell.
And for context, for those who are outside of Ghana and aren't in on what the Ahmed Swale story is, Ahmed Swale was Anas's colleague, and I believe you worked together on the number 12 investigation.
Yeah,
many others, which essentially exposed corruption in football in Ghana. Ahmed Swale was killed in 2019, and the killers have so far not been found. So the question is in relation to the murder of Ahmed Swale. Now, another question we got on our Facebook community comes from Sami Boachi. He's asking that you show your face. Is this something you're going to do?
Well, that's a very interesting question. But It's just like me asking Ghana, stop corruption. So you stop corruption, I'll show my face.
Fair comment. Another one from Nana Kesua is that what is the greatest challenge in conducting investigative work in Ghana?
Kasiwa, it is the greatest challenge has always been when institutions are not helping, when institutions join with government to clamp you down. That has been the biggest challenge, but that should not induce in us a sense of complacency. Kasiwa, we all have the capacity to be Anases. You are the Anas in your local area, be it Kasua, be it Nima or Airport Residential. It is the support I get from people like you, Kasiwa, that I'm able to do what I do. So that's the point. The challenges are there, but God has created all of us in such a way that we have capacity to withstand, no matter how hot the kitchen is.
And we've got one from Nabil Ahmed, but that you've already touched on. He says, what do you make of the way your integrity has been questioned after the fallout from the Nyantechi football scandal and the way things turn out at the High Court when the judges asked you to show your face and testify as a witness? You already touched on that, but if there's more...
Yeah, I'm saying that it is fair. And as journalists, we should always know that our integrity would always be questioned. We are always prepared for that. I mean, it was very unfortunate that the court told me that they will only prosecute Nyantechi if I show my face. It's an unfortunate decision. And I believe, especially when I was not the one on trial, but I believe the Attorney General has the capacity to deal with these issues. As for me, I'm certain in my ways, like I told you in my press release, that I am not going to show my face because the evidence they are looking for is not in my face. When FIFA adjudication committee banned Nyantechi for life and found him some francs, thousands of francs, did I show my face to them? I never did. So if it can work for FIFA, why can't it work for our democracy in Ghana? But then again, it's a judicial process. People must be allowed to air their sentiments, whether we like it as a people or not. We can also challenge those, and we have opinions. In any case, it's the state that is putting Nyantechi on trial. It's not Anas. Anas has a right to decide whether he wants to help the state. It's like you have a problem. You've called me to come and help you. Then you are now saying that I should strip naked before I help you. You are the one who needs that help. So the state must decide whether it is willing to prosecute it bad people or not. It's up to them. We are watching, and the voters are watching. That is the most important. The voters are watching every government that comes into power and how they decide, in their opinion, to fight corruption.
We are bringing the conversation to an end, but there are lots of young people, as I hinted earlier, who want to do what you do. What would be your advice to them?
Keywords. Guys, look, whether the big people like it or not, we are the future of Ghana. And the bad guys would always want to frustrate us because for them there's nothing else to get from Ghana. We have a long way to go as young people. We are now going to make kids. Some have made kids, and we have to build a solid future for our children. And if we want to do so, and if we want to live in a peaceful environment, unlike other African countries where there are wars and others, we still have to push the tenets of our democracy. We have to push and ensure that the right thing is done. It's not going to be easy, but let us stand firm. Let us ensure that we do the right thing. And let us not forget, extreme remedies are the most appropriate for extreme diseases. And I would always belong to the remedy. I ask you all to join me to push the frontiers of our democracy forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time, Anas. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Michael.